challenging war between Trump and the neocons of the Cabal. The notion of former President Trump reinstating policies that aim to keep neoconservatives or neocons out of key governmental roles, particularly within the CIA, FBI, and the federal government, stems from a belief that such individuals operate with interests aligned with the cabal rather than the public. This essay will address the rationale behind this hope in the broader geopolitical context, emphasizing the perceived threats, challenges, and shifts in the global power dynamic. Key points include the sabotage risk posed by neocons, the implications of a multipolar world, and the strategic recalibration needed to avoid conflict while maintaining American interests. 1. The neoconservative influence and alleged sabotage risk. Neoconservatives, often seen as proponents of a hardline foreign policy that favors military intervention, are thought by some to be less aligned with populist interests and more with globalist agendas. Neocons in key government agencies. There is concern that placing neoconservative figures in power positions within the CIA, FBI, or federal government could lead to decisions favoring elite interests, especially if they align with the military-industrial complex. Perception of the Trojan horse effect. Just as the mythological horse of Troy symbolized infiltration, these neoconservatives may be viewed as embedded operatives who could sabotage or redirect policies, undermining an America-first approach in favor of a globalist or interventionist agenda. Potential for undermining Trump's policies. If reinstated, Trump could find his administration hindered by internal forces acting in opposition to his vision of limited military intervention and reduced overseas spending. 2. Challenges from within the Republican Party. It's not just the neocons who may oppose Trump's policies, but also factions within the Republican Party that benefit from military spending and foreign intervention. Republican alignment with the military-industrial complex. Many Republican politicians support increased military budgets, which benefits defense contractors and promotes an interventionist foreign policy. This contrasts with Trump's preference for reducing foreign conflicts and focusing on domestic issues. Fiscal and strategic implications of high military spending. The fake war concept, in which conflicts are perpetuated for profit and political gain, could clash with a policy shift toward fiscal responsibility and non-intervention. 3. Shift to a multipolar world order. The world has undergone significant geopolitical changes since Trump's first administration, with a transition from U.S. unipolarity to a more multipolar global landscape. Decline of U.S. influence. Actions taken during the Biden administration, including foreign policy missteps, are seen as having weakened U.S. global standing. Additionally, other powers, such as Russia and China, have solidified alliances that counterbalance American influence. Need for new diplomatic strategies. A renewed Trump administration would need to adopt strategies that consider the interests of emerging powers, rather than imposing unilateral policies. Challenge of competing with China and Russia's soft power. The growing alliances among countries across Asia, Africa, and Latin America could necessitate a recalibration of U.S. foreign policy to avoid confrontation with these blocs. 4. The complicated U.S.-Middle East relations. Any new U.S. policy in the Middle East would need to navigate delicate regional dynamics, particularly in relation to Israel, Saudi Arabia, Turkey, and Iran. Need to mitigate escalation with new alliances. Trump's administration would need to work closely with influential Middle Eastern players to avoid conflicts that could disrupt the region. This includes potentially distancing from hawkish pro-Zionist elements that may push for aggressive policies. Turkey and Russia as key partners. Turkey, under the Biden administration, has shifted away from the U.S., viewing American policies with suspicion. Trump would need to mend relations with Turkey and consider its pivotal role in both NATO and the Middle East. Potential for Turkey to leave NATO. Given Turkey's stance, there's a possibility it could exit NATO, which would significantly alter the region's security dynamics. Trump's diplomacy would require balancing between securing American interests and respecting Turkey's evolving alliances. 5. The diminishing relevance of NATO and the UN. As the world becomes increasingly multipolar, institutions like NATO and the United Nations are viewed as less effective in maintaining global order. NATO as a mere tool for U.S. military sales. NATO's original mission to counter the Soviet Union seems outdated in a world where diverse threats and economic interests drive alliances. It could be argued that NATO now primarily serves as a channel for American defense sales rather than genuine security cooperation. UN criticisms and allegations of globalist agendas. The United Nations, often criticized for inefficiency in favoring certain elite families, might be seen as a mechanism for pushing globalist goals rather than supporting genuine peacekeeping. Trump's foreign policy may aim to circumvent the UN's influence by forming direct bilateral relations. 6. The influence of financial power and the cabal. There is concern that financial elites, often tied to globalist agendas, have outsized influence over policies within the U.S. government. Federal Reserve independence and influence. The Federal Reserve's ownership structure, which involves private entities, fuels arguments that elite families prioritize a globalist agenda over U.S. national interests. Addressing this influence would be key in reasserting American sovereignty. Resisting the globalist agenda. By reducing dependence on these financial elites, Trump's administration could reclaim more control over national policy and curb the spread of globalist policies that may not align with American interests. Conclusion. In summary, Trump's potential second term faces complex domestic and international challenges. The influence of neocons and some Republicans who favor a more interventionist approach could impede his agenda, particularly when aligned with the interests of the military-industrial complex. Additionally, navigating a world that has become more multipolar, reestablishing relationships in the Middle East, and balancing NATO commitments will require a carefully crafted diplomatic strategy. Finally, limiting the influence of financial elites and the cabal over government policy will be essential to ensure that American interests remain the administration's priority.